Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maria Kirpachova, and I am head of the legal department of limited liability company Space Logistics Ukraine. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizing committee of the Space Mining Conference. It is a great honor for me to be here today. My report is dedicated to the modern trends of space mining regulation in United Arab Emirates and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. To begin with, I must mention that there are no elaborately developed legislative frameworks for space mining regulation in the Middle East, except of special provisions in federal law issued by Emirates in December 2019. That is why one of my primary goals today is to prove why I am convinced that Saudi Arabia will become the second state in the Middle East to regulate the extraction and utilization of space resources. For this purpose, I will bring three blocks of evidences: relevance of space mining for United Arab Emirates and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, political and economical preconditions, existing legislation, and legislation at the drafting stage. The countries of the Arab Gulf are excessively dependent on oil revenues, and for quite a long time they are looking for measures to undertake in order to diversify their economies away from oil dependence. For instance, the Saudi economy is run by oil, fed by oil, and sustained by oil. At the same time, Emirates have already crossed this line of dependence and currently relies on technology development as the main pillar of establishing a new sustainable economy on the state level. In 2015, the McKinsey Global Institute issued the report dedicated to threatening tendencies of a changing global energy market. It was especially relevant for the Middle East. It was recommended for Saudi Arabia to reprioritize its efforts from oil industry into other spheres, like tourism, healthcare, and metal mining, in order to give impetus to its national economy. As a result, the government of Saudi Arabia decided to do its best to develop and implement the national policy document called Vision 2030 that will take into account the interests of a growing youth bulge. Vision 2030 became a starting point for the Saudi space industry and for legislative processes as well. Nowadays, United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia have their own mighty space and aeronautics programs. Taking into account their ambitions to be the first Arabic states to investigate the outer space, in this context, we must mention that Saudi citizen became the first Arabic astronaut, and Emirates was the first Arabic state to send a Martian probe called Hope. They can really benefit from extracting water and platinum on the near-Earth objects and using these resources either for further activity in space or on the Earth and create alternative export products. As the scientist Tom James stated, Middle East investment in space is growing as it works to shift from an oil-based to a knowledge-based economy. So why Saudi Arabia and Emirates can become leaders in space mining not only in their region but all over the world? First of all, they have a vast expertise in resources extraction on the Earth. Secondly, they keep working on developing their space programs. And the last but not least, the Middle East is geographically well situated to host space launch facilities, given its close proximity to the Earth's equator. Moreover, both countries are members of the Arab Coordination Group that has the potential to lay the foundation for an Arab space agency. In this group, they are the leading countries of the region in establishing the best standards of the national space policies. Saudi Arabia has shown its interest in developing low-cost satellite launch systems and in space transport industries. For its part, Emirates became the first country in the Middle East that signed the Artemis Accords, an international treaty that aims to further cement the principles of peaceful collaboration in space mining as well. It means that United Arab Emirates and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia can potentially combine their efforts: satellite systems developed by Saudi Arabia and probes and small lunar rovers developed by Emirates in space resources extraction and utilization, especially taking into account that in 2019, The parties signed the Memorandum of Understanding in Space Sphere, which predisposes to bilateral cooperation in space projects and programs, as well as in developing space policies and legislation. So, talking about space mining regulation in the Middle East, I would like to say that in the end of 2019, United Arab Emirates issued federal law on the regulation of the space sector. The law, deemed as the first of its kind in the Arab and Islamic level, it aims to create a legislative and regulatory environment in the United Arab Emirates space sector in harmony with other laws and regulations in the country, respects international treaties, and characterized by clarity, transparency, and flexibility, protecting the interests of the state. United Arab Emirates became the third country in the world after United States and Luxembourg that has implemented special legislative framework to regulate space mining activity, exploration, and use of space resources. The law is characterized by dealing with the traditional legal issues in space legislation, as well as a number of new issues in this field, such as launch from space, extraction and utilization of space resources, manned commercial space activities, space tourism, building and using man-made facilities in space and other celestial bodies, providing logistical services in space, space science and training trips supporting space and high-altitude activities, space debris, space risk management, and meteorites falling from space. According to Article 18 of the law, all the activity connected to space resources extraction shall be determined by a decision issued by the Council of Ministers or whoever is delegated. The authorization shall be granted by a resolution of the Board of Directors upon the proposal of the Director General. At the same time, Saudi Arabia is currently in process of drafting its national space legislation according to the strategic goals marked in the framework of the Vision 2030. For instance, manufacturing and developing the latest Earth surveillance technologies, strengthening geographic information services, engaging the local commercial sector, promoting international cooperation in space exploration, security and peace within space, establishing an international law of space through space exploration programs, moon exploration programs, space telecommunications programs, and space technology programs. The main goals that the space program strives include Saudi Arabia to play a role in the important international and regional space exploration missions, exploiting space systems provided by other organizations in the space exploration industry, enhancing the level of higher education in aerospace and training programs in the kingdom, developing resources and paying attention to the aerospace sector, promoting the spread and use of national air and space projects and services at the national level in the public sector, the industrial sector, and the general public. To meet all the regulatory demands of the space industry, Saudi Space Commission is going to issue the Space and Geospatial Data Infrastructure Law and Act that will encompass the provisions for the further issues: national security, national needs, water resources, etc., capacity building, space assets, coordinating between governmental and private sectors. To summarize all the talking points of this presentation, I would like to draw the further conclusions. Saudi Arabia is in process of implementing the provisions for the extraction, exploitation, and utilization of space resources. They will be integrated into Space and Geospatial Data Infrastructure Law and Act that is currently being developed under the Vision 2030. Vision 2030 is the main document that predetermines the direction of development the space industry legislation in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is strongly focused on United Arab Emirates space policy standards and will obviously be the second state in the Middle East to implement the space mining regulation into its national legislative framework. Returning to the space mining regulation in Emirates, I would like to mention that according to the federal law on the regulation of the space sector in United Arab Emirates, any activity connected to extraction, exploitation, and utilization of space resources, including their ownership, purchase, sale, trade, transportation, and storage, must be authorized. The law doesn't contain any restrictions for private actors to conduct the space mining activity, so private companies can retain full ownership of their spoils. United Arab Emirates supports the United States practice in establishing public-private partnership in the space industry that is clearly reflected in its national legislation. On the other hand, there is an issue from the international law practice that must be considered, given that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is in process of drafting its space law, while United Arab Emirates is in process of drafting the subsidiary legislation to the federal law on the regulation of the space sector. Both countries should take into account the building blocks for the development of an international framework on space resource activities adopted on 12 November 2019. It is worth mentioning that the Artemis Accords put forward the initiative of all parties to build safety zones and stipulates relevant requirements of notification and coordination between partner nations. The building blocks pay more attention to balance the rights and interests between the state that establishes the safety zone and the successor states. It's necessary for Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates to rely primarily on the building blocks in their further legislative activity. Right at the end, I would like to share with you the quote by Jim Lovell, Apollo 8 astronaut. "The Earth from here is a grand oasis in the big vastness of space. So that is why we are obliged to guarantee the responsible activity connected to space resources, extraction and utilization in full compliance with the provisions of international space law. As I would like to also remark, we must to get used to the thought that not only the Earth is our homeland and oasis of human life, but all the universe is our homeland and oasis. It is obligatory for us to care about environment either on the Earth or on the other celestial bodies and space objects. Only in this case the universe will be ready to give us the best resources that belong to it, with no harm and threats for the universe and for us." Thank you for your attention.